In 1901, a sponge diver off the coast of a small Greek island held his breath and swam down into a shipwreck that had been sitting on the seafloor for 2,000 years. He was looking for statues, bronze, marble, anything worth selling. What he found instead looked like nothing. A corroded lump of metal and wood, fused together by centuries of seawater. Someone almost threw it away. That lump turned out to be the most advanced machine built by human hands before the Renaissance. You know it now as the Antikythera Mechanism. A hand-crank device, roughly the size of a shoebox, packed with over 30 precision bronze gears. It tracked the position of the sun. It tracked the moon. It predicted eclipses years in advance. It even accounted for the moon's irregular orbit, something scientists didn't fully explain again until Johannes Kepler, more than 1,600 years later. Ancient Greece built a computer, and then, as far as anyone can tell, it built only one. Doesn't that strike you as strange? Think about how technology actually spreads. You don't invent the smartphone and then let it vanish. Someone copies it, improves it, competitors emerge. Within a decade, the idea is everywhere. Because good ideas replicate. That is how progress usually works. One breakthrough triggers a chain reaction. So when historians of science, including Derek de Solla Price, the researcher who first X-rayed the mechanism in the 1970s and mapped its gear ratios, realized what this object actually was, they were left with an uncomfortable question. If the ancient Greeks could build this, why does nothing else like it survive? Price spent years staring at rusted fragments, piecing together a gear train so sophisticated that when he finally published his findings, some colleagues assumed he had to be wrong. Nothing from that era should have been capable of this kind of mechanical complexity. But the math was undeniable. The gears meshed. The ratios matched real astronomical cycles. This wasn't decoration. It was a working scientific instrument centuries ahead of anything else discovered from the ancient world. So where did the others go? One answer is unbearably simple. Bronze melts down and gets reused. Wars happen. Empires fall. Most bronze objects from antiquity were eventually stripped and recast into weapons or coins, because bronze was valuable and old machines were not. The Antikythera Mechanism only survived because it sank in a shipwreck, sealed away from the very civilization that might have melted it down for scrap. You are not looking at the only one that ever existed. You are looking at the only one that got lucky enough to hide. That changes the entire story, doesn't it? Because if one supremely complex device survived by accident buried under a Roman shipwreck near the island of Antikythera, then simple probability suggests there were others. Workshops, apprentices, a tradition of instrument-making passed from craftsman to craftsman, the way any specialized skill moves through a society. The historian and Antikythera researcher Alexander Jones, who has spent decades studying the mechanism's inscriptions, has argued exactly this. The device shows signs of refinement, not invention. Small design choices that suggest earlier, cruder versions once existed, versions this particular mechanism improved upon. You are not looking at a miracle. You are looking at a late model, from a production line that history simply forgot to record. Ask yourself what that means for everything else you assume about the ancient world. Modern culture tends to draw a clean line between ancient people and technological people, as if precision engineering only started with the Industrial Revolution. But the Antikythera Mechanism proves that instinct wrong. Someone in the 2nd century BCE understood gear ratios well enough to model the moon's elliptical orbit using nothing but bronze, hand tools, and mathematics inherited from Babylonian astronomers before them. That is not primitive. That is a civilization capable of building something you would recognize, structurally, as an analog computer. And then it disappeared. Not because the knowledge was wrong, but because the world around it collapsed faster than the knowledge could spread. The Roman Republic was consuming the Mediterranean during exactly this period. Trade routes that might have carried this technology further, workshops that might have trained the next generation of instrument makers, libraries that might have preserved the manuals, all of it sat inside a world being reorganized by conquest, civil war, and the slow unraveling of Hellenistic Greek institutions. Knowledge doesn't just need a genius to create it, it needs stability to survive the handoff to the next generation. Rome gave the Mediterranean many things. Stability for fragile scientific traditions was not always one of them. Consider how fragile your own information actually is, held up against that. You live in a world where knowledge feels permanent, backed up, searchable, impossible to lose. But everything you know about the Antikythera Mechanism itself depends on one object surviving one shipwreck for 2,000 years, found by one diver who almost didn't bother picking it up. If that ship had sunk 50 meters to the left, in slightly rougher current, the metal might have corroded past recognition. You would have no evidence any of this ever existed. Ancient Greek astronomy would look to you exactly as primitive as you were taught it was. That is the real unsettling part of this story. It isn't just about one brilliant device. It's about how much of what humans have actually accomplished simply vanishes, leaving no trace, no record, nothing for a future civilization to X-ray and puzzle over. The Antikythera Mechanism is not evidence that the ancient world was uniquely brilliant. It's evidence that brilliance has always existed, quietly, in workshops nobody thought to write about, and most of it never survives long enough for anyone to notice. You were taught that ancient technology was simple. Simple stone tools, simple levers, simple wheels. What sank off the coast of a Greek island in a Roman shipwreck was not simple at all. It was proof that somewhere in the ancient Mediterranean, someone had already built a machine to model the universe, and it was never meant to be the only one.